Not sure what the best practices are when it comes to managing both student as well as parent-guardian expectations in the world of distance learning? Then stick with me until the end of this video, because we're going to go over 3 best practices when it comes to managing student expectations, as well as 5 best practices when it comes to managing parent and guardian expectations. By the end of this video, you're going to have 8 best practices that you can start applying to your remote learning environment. So if you're excited to learn about these best practices, hit that like button right now and let's get into it. This school year is going to require some big adjustments from both students and teachers. So here are 3 best practices for setting clear student expectations. The first tip is to track student attendance. It's really important that at this time, we're checking our roster to see which students are showing up to school and which students are not, and reaching out to the respective family members that could potentially help them show up for school in a distance learning environment. Remember to consider your tone here and first ask why the student wasn't able to show up before then transitioning to talking about how we can make attendance more and more of a reality. Remote learning is new for a lot of families, so trying to understand where they're coming from can be a great first step in terms of setting clear expectations. Another best practice is to have students create learning resources. One study suggests that by having students take the lead in a classroom, it can be a great way for you to boost your student engagement. Also, by doing so, you can identify which students are potentially more interested in taking leadership roles in your classroom than other students. As a teacher, you can let your student take lead in just part of the lesson or the entire lesson. Don't be afraid as well to have your students create presentations themselves and present them in front of the rest of the class. They can also use screen recording softwares like Screencastify or Zoom in order to create voiceovers of them going over the presentation. This will allow for asynchronous learning to occur in your classroom. Or instead of giving them a traditional assessment, you might ask your students to create a practice test or assessment that they themselves would want to take to review for a particular topic that you've covered. The third best practice is to make sure that you're establishing a clear and consistent structure. Students need routines in order to have easy transitions. So as a result, what you're going to need to do as an educator is make sure that you are readily available at set points in time for your students. This will be helpful for both the completion of tasks as well as facilitating asynchronous and synchronous learning. If students understand what's expected of them, they'll be able to better perform to the expectation itself. Share your live synchronous learning schedules in advance and try to have the same sessions every single day. This way, students can learn what to expect from you. Another way to do this during distance learning is to set office hours that you are consistently showing up for. Let students drop into your lesson room so that they can ask you any questions they may have had from the prior assignment or from the prior live session. One fully virtual school recommended scheduling meal times and also scheduling time to review the schedule for tomorrow the day before. The reason why is because this allows students to proactively learn how to time manage and plan ahead to the rest of their week. Real quick, if you're enjoying this video so far, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe so that you can get new videos around distance learning to help you improve your virtual classroom. Now let's jump into 5 best practices when it comes to setting clear parent-guardian expectations. The first quarter that you're back in school is really important because it sets the tone for the entire school year. The first best practice is to make sure that you're updating contact information immediately and often. One of the worst things for an educator during a distance learning environment is to have to answer a voicemail box that goes along the lines of, "The person you're attempting to contact is not available." It's vital for your school or district to get parent-guardian information as quickly as possible in the early onset of the school year as opposed to later on. This information needs to be made readily available for teachers and should provide things like what the relationship of the person is to the student, the best ways to contact them in terms of whether they prefer email or phone, and also any other related information that would be important to know in terms of meeting the student's needs. It can be really helpful here to check whether or not the person is open to receiving text messages, since that might be an easier way to get in touch with a parent or guardian, especially if they are working from home. You'll also want to make sure that there's a system in place in which teachers can update the parent information in case anything changes as they reach out to them. If the student is in middle or high school, you might want to explore your school or district's policies in terms of getting student phone numbers numbers so that you can remain in touch with the student when a particular assignment is needed or due. The first phone call that you make to them should always be a welcome call. The purpose of this call is simply to meet the family, introduce yourself, and set expectations for what the school year is going to look like. If the child is in middle or high school, you might not necessarily need to have a welcome call for every single class that the student is taking, but the school should take it upon themselves to make sure that every single parent does receive a welcome call for the school year. In this welcome call, it's really important that you verify the contact information that we previously mentioned in the prior tip, and that you also start identifying the strengths and weaknesses for each of these students. It's also really important that teachers discuss the importance of high communication throughout distance learning, the grading policy and attendance policies for their respective classrooms. The third thing to keep in mind is that you need to be utilizing a ton of different forms of communication. The reality is that not every single parent checks their email every single day, and so you're going to need multiple ways to get in touch with your students' parents. Some parents are going to communicate better via text or phone calls. You need to figure out what the preferred communication mode is for each of your students' parents so that you can make sure that you are relaying the important information about your students to them. Remind 101 can be a great way for you to send bulk text messages to the parents of your students. We suggest that you use this for quick updates or reminders. You can also use it to share different resource links that you think might be helpful in facilitating the student's distance learning experience. If you want an extra layer of personal privacy, you can try signing up for something like a Google Voice number to give you a free number that you can use for both calling and texting. Weekly email newsletters are also a great way to make sure that everybody is staying in the loop. This can be a great way for you to outline upcoming assignments, class schedules, as well as any other relevant information to your class. Lucid Press has some great resources that teachers can use in terms of templates to get their weekly newsletter up and running. The fourth best practice is to make sure that you're creating and sharing your virtual syllabus. Just like in a traditional classroom, a course syllabi is the easiest way for you to communicate the expectations and things that you're going to be covering in your class. Include things such as behavior and attendance expectations, as well as the topics that you're going to be covering over the course of the school year. Make sure that you include the best ways to get in touch with you, as well as links to your classroom's website. The reason why is so that parents and guardians can check your site to make sure that they are holding your students accountable to doing the work that you're assigning them. We suggest that you create your syllabus using Google Documents, and the reason why is so that you can create real-time updates over the course of the first few quarters of a distance learning schedule so that everything remains dynamic and that it's not set in stone. It's really helpful as well in your syllabi to include some additional resources that your students might find helpful in their studying. Albert can be a great place for your students to get additional practice as they work through practice questions with detailed explanations to help them master the concepts that you've gone over in class. For really important messages that you want to make sure parents and guardians have received, you can create a remote sign-off link using something like Google Forms. By creating a Google Forms link, you can send that to the parent or guardian to sign off that they received the information that you are trying to send them. In this, just make sure that you're asking for their name, the date, and the best email to get in touch with them in case you have any follow-up from this information you're sharing. The fifth best practice when it comes to setting parent expectations is to make sure that you're considering your tone. The reality is that when we are communicating mostly through writing, it's really difficult to sometimes understand the facial expressions that we're trying to emote with the message, or just in general the message we're trying to communicate. If you feel like it's on brand for you, you might want to include emojis or images whenever possible to liven up your messages. It might also be helpful to read over your message out loud to yourself from the lens of a parent or guardian to make sure that there is no confusion or wrong tone used in your messaging. Whatever the case may be, make sure that you're always responding in a polite and professional way when you're working with parents. You want to make sure that you are always positioning yourself as being in their corner in terms of doing what's best for their student. All right, that pretty much wraps up the 8 best practices that we have when it comes to setting expectations for both your students as well as their parents and guardians. If you found this video helpful, do me a favor and hit that like button right now, and feel free to share it with any educator that you personally know that might benefit from learning about these best practices. Also, if you like this sort of content, be sure you hit that subscribe button and that notification bell so that you can get notified whenever we are going to create a new video on distance learning. We're going to cover a ton of different topics related to this to make sure that you are positioned as well as you can be for success. Lastly, make sure that you bookmark our free back to school resource hub. On it, you're going to find a ton of free resources when it comes to remote learning that will help set you up for success. We go over important topics like how to build relationships virtually, as well as how to even host a virtual parent-teacher conference. So you're going to really find this valuable, and you can get it in the link in the video description below. That's it for this time though. We'll catch you guys next time when we go over another pressing distance learning topic.